What up, what up, what up, y'all? This your boy Fink, the ice cream man, checking in live and direct from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Man, I know it's been a while since y'all last time y'all seen your boy. It's been a lot going on in the world, man. Jay-Z popped out of nowhere, did a little freestyle on the stage, got everybody in the uproar. Um, what else going on? We got the Iran war popping off. Trump still on some BS with that. You know what I'm saying? But tonight, man, I want to bring y'all something that's going on pretty big in the world as well. Something that's going on here. We got a big major trial that's going on in America between two teenagers. Yes, it has something to do with race, meaning black and white. Uh, we got two teenagers, man, involved in a very serious case out of Texas. There's a black teenager by the name of Carmelo Anthony, not the basketball player, of course. Because when I first heard this, Carmelo Anthony, I thought it was the basketball player, but no, this is kids here. Um, anyway, Carmelo Anthony is a black teenager who had an incident with a white teenager at a track meet in Texas. Now, from the knowledge that I've gotten so far, um, it's appeared to be a rainy day, and and Carmelo Anthony wanted to get out the rain, so he just stood under a tent. Now, if you go back, I don't know how old you people are that's checking out this live right now, but I've been to a track meet before when I was in school, and it's different tents out there where people can stand up under or whatever, waiting for their event to start. So Carmelo Anthony stood up on a tent to get out of the rain, and all of a sudden he was approached by, I'm gonna say, the victim right now because he is deceased, and he has a part of this case. So I'm gonna say the victim. He provoked the black kid Carmelo. I have my own personal reasons why he provoked him, and specifically how he provoked him. You know what I'm saying? So that's the reason why I put that in that title. Did Eric Metcalf, the victim, did he get what he deserved? And did my man Carmelo Anthony, did he stand his ground? So right now I'm gonna bring it to you guys. The today was the first day of the trial. I've heard that it's supposed to be about 2 weeks. So let's get into it, y'all. Shout out to the six people who's checking out the Neighborhood Superstar podcast right now. We got somebody in the chat room say, "What up? What's up with you, homie? Please like and subscribe. Let's get into this, man. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about this, y'all."
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for being with us this afternoon as we track a very big case that is happening out in the state of Texas. A high school track meet ended in a 17-year-old's death, and now the trial is getting national attention. People are divided, talking about race and self-defense, and today we are following day one of Carmelo Anthony's murder trial happening out there in McKinney. And inside of that courtroom now, they have taken a break. We've been following those live notes all day, and we're going to check in with Cody Thomas in just a moment. But where we're at right now is after the first witness was called by the state, a forensic video analyst was the one who was testifying to multiple wide-angled surveillance videos that the prosecution admitted was not crystal clear. But while playing that video, there was some reaction in the gallery. Okay.
You hear that? Y'all hear that? You had a forensics guy in there checking out the video, the first witness, and he admitted that it's unclear in the video. Remember that, y'all.
Cameras are not allowed inside of this courtroom, but the ground in Frisco, we have our own Cody Thomas, who is following everything that's happening. Let's take a look back. Even though we don't have those cameras, we do have the defense attorney, Mike Howard, what he said before the gag order was put in place in this case.
We expect that when the full story is heard, the prosecution will not be able to rule out the reasonable doubt that Carmelo Anthony may have acted in self-defense. Self-defense is a fundamental right guaranteed every American.
That's
The law
true.
is clear. When self-defense is raised by the facts, the law puts the burden squarely on the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the citizen accused did not act in self-defense. The law does not expect or require the citizen accused to prove that they acted in self-defense. It's actually the opposite. The law requires the prosecution to rule out the reasonable doubt that the citizen accused may have acted in self-defense.
Now let's go right now to someone who is inside of that
There you
courtroom listening to these opening statements. No cameras, but we have our eyes and ears inside of the courtroom. Cody Thomas joins us now live outside of the courthouse in McKinney, Texas. Cody, good to see you. Tell me about those opening statements, first of all. What was it like being inside of the courthouse for those?
Well, yeah, Julia, as we know this judge is really laying down the law inside that courtroom, being very strict on how people go to and from the courtroom, and about, us as media using electronics. He even admonished members of the gallery for whispering to each other, saying if he caught somebody whispering again, I didn't see anybody whispering, but, he just said if he saw that again, they'd keep them out, he'd kick them out permanently. But Julia, to touch on those opening statements, of course, the prosecution is continuing the narrative that we've heard from the beginning since April of 2025, that Carmelo Anthony was under that tent for no good reason. He was just there, and then Austin Metcalf and his friends came up to approach him to say, get out from under the tent, to which Carmelo Anthony, the prosecution says, got aggressive, reached in that bag, pulled out a knife, and stabbed Austin Metcalf. But the defense in their opening statements painted a different picture. They began by humanizing Carmelo Anthony, talking about how he had 2 jobs in high school, how he was, a brother, a son, an oldest brother, how he was a 3.7 GPA A student in school, just really painting him out to be a good human being before.
So he was a smart young man. He was a smart young man. He wasn't no thug. So let's get that put out. Let's make sure we put out there that Carmelo Anthony wasn't no young punk ass YN, as they say these days. He was a smart young man. He came from a solid background. If I'm not mistaken, I believe both his parents were military veterans. You know what I'm saying? So let's not put that narrative out there that he was a YN. Let's not do that. We're not going to do that on the Neighborhood Superstar Podcast.
Diving into their version of the facts of the case. Now, of course,
he was a responsible young man who had a 3.7 GPA and held down 2 jobs. Come on.
We've heard that statement from eyewitnesses, or a witness on the stand, or not on the stand, in the area, saying that Carmelo reached into the bag saying, touch me if you want to, or see what happens if you touch me. And that's what led, when Austin pushed him, he stabbed him in the chest. But the defense attorney says it was more of a...
Shout out to Classic 4158 said, I need to cheat on my barber. Oh, shit, that's funny. Appreciate that, man.
As long as you don't touch me.
I actually was going to go get a haircut today, but shit, I was so fucking lazy and shit.
That, everything's fine. I understand there's a verbal altercation going on here, but just don't put your hands on me. So that was the narrative the defense painted there. They also said that Carmelo was under the tent because he was seeing somebody he was familiar with, a friend of his still girlfriend now, somebody he'd been acquainted with, somebody he recognized. And then they walked through...
Okay, hold on. Let's listen again. Let's listen to that again.
That, everything's fine. I understand there's a verbal altercation.
Let's listen to that again.
Painting him out to be a good human being before diving into their version of the facts of the case. Now, of course, we've heard that statement from eyewitnesses or a witness on the stand, or not on the stand, in the area, saying that Carmelo reached into the bag saying, "Touch me if you want to," or "See what happens if you touch me." And that's what led, when Austin pushed him, he stabbed him in the chest. But the defense attorney says it was more of a, "As long as you don't touch me, we'll be cool," implying that, everything's fine. I understand there's a verbal altercation going on here, but just don't put your hands on me. So that was the narrative the defense painted.
Now, I want to speak on that. I want to speak on the verbal altercation first. Do you really think, now, the white kid, Austin Metcalf, we all saw that the picture that we just seen him, he played football, so he was a jock. You know what I'm saying? We all know how those jocks are in high school. They arrogant, they assholes, you know what I'm saying? They think they're better than everybody, and some of them are bullies. So do you really think that this was some, because it was told to me that my man Carmelo went to go and chill up under the tent because it was raining outside. But we just heard my man say that no, he knew somebody that actually went to the school. So being that the white dude saw this stranger up under his tent, you think he went down there all nice and telling him, "Hey man, this is our tent. This is the visitors." He went down there talking shit, and I bet you he went down there probably saying some racial slurs and all that kind of stuff too. Because we all know that when especially a white man, when a white man is around his boys, they say some of the craziest, outlandish stuff. We already know that. So let's get back into this, man. That's what I believe. I don't believe the dude, just like how the defense attorney said, the dude was like, Carmelo Anthony was like, "Hey, as long as you don't touch me, man, just don't touch me." And then I can see old boy was like, "What the fuck you gonna do? What the fuck you gonna do? What the fuck you gonna do if I touch you? What you gonna do?" Provoked him. And that's why I raised that question in the title, y'all. Did he get what he deserved? Let's get back to it.
There, they also said that Carmelo was under the tent because he was seeing somebody he was familiar with, a friend of his still girlfriend now, somebody he'd been acquainted with, somebody he recognized. And then they walked through some of that video, Julia, showing that Carmelo Anthony was under the tent for about 2 minutes before Metcalf, his twin brother, and their friends got to the tent, and the whole ordeal went down in about 4.5 minutes of both parties being under that tent, Julia. But again, emotional out here. I'm looking around it here. There's a lot more demonstrators than there were yesterday during the election. So, each side is here. It's a polarizing case, of course, that's got many headlines across this country. But those opening statements were definitely powerful on either side.
Notes, Cody. We're so fortunate that you've been able to share with us what is happening inside of that courtroom. Tell us more about the surveillance video, because your notes on this were very interesting. What were you able to see? And then I also understand there was a reaction.
That's gonna be a very interesting part right there. What's on the video? Although the forensics guy said that most of it is unviewable. You can't really see what really happened. So let's see.
When that was being played.
Yeah, Julia. So that's in the opening statement. They were referencing surveillance video, and of course, everyone wanted to see video. We haven't anything. There's been a gag order on this case since the very beginning last year. So they start playing this video. There were 5 different angles of the video getting walked through from testimony by the forensic video analyst. And they were very wide-angle videos, Julia, and the witness had to talk about how he had to use this software to zoom in and try to make the video as clear as possible. And even then, Julia, I won't lie, it still looked very fuzzy and hazy. It definitely sets the scene. You can see what's going on, but even the prosecution distinctly said that you won't be able to uniquely identify anyone, but they referred to Carmelo on the video as the person of interest, and they referred to Austin Metcalf as the victim, of course, as the forensic analyst has digested this video and dissected it and pointed out everything that we need to know, going through shoes and the type of clothing they were wearing. So we identified who each person was in the video, even though they kind of just look like humanoid blobs. But you see, one thing.
So you really can't tell who is who in the damn video. So the video should be admissible in court then, in my personal opinion. What y'all think, chat?
This out to me, Julie, is that, I'm very familiar with track meets. I was under the impression that, to a championship track meet, you have multiple tents on the same side of the bleachers. But in this video, because it's early in the morning, just before 10 a.m. when all this happened, the high school where all this went down, Memorial High School, it was just an isolated tent in the bleachers by itself. There were no surrounding, schools or anything in the area. You saw some schools walking in, but I guess, the meet was just starting. But anyway, they identified Carmelo walking up the bleachers, kind of walking towards the tent. He kind of goes towards someone, and you see him standing there for a couple of minutes. Then you see Austin Metcalf, his twin brother, and his friends walking up and getting under the tent. And then once everything's happening under the tent, it just kind of looks like a blob of people. You can't really make out anything that's really going on for 5 to 6 minutes. And then you see a quick to and from. And they were implying that was like the push, the initial contact. You can't really see anything happening before then. You see people walking by. They're not really, turning heads as if.
That's when Eric pushed him. That's when Eric pushed him right there. So he provoked him. He provoked him right there.
Something's loud and, something's catching their attention. But all of a sudden you see that to and from, and then you see Carmelo, or who they identify as person of interest, who we're assuming to be Carmelo Anthony. He runs out from under the tent, and then he's running down the bleachers, sprinting a ways away from the tent and out of the stadium, onto the track and everything, towards one of his coaches. And eventually after that, we see another angle of the video where Carmelo's been taken into custody by police. But the reaction, it wasn't a visceral reaction. When you saw the to and from, of course, that's the stabbing action, if you will. All I saw him sitting 2 rows behind Austin Metcalf's father, and his head was just kind of in his hands, kind of like this. Wasn't necessarily crying, but, just implying that he doesn't really want to see, even though you can't see the stabbing, but he knows in his mind this is the moment that his son lost his life. So he was just there, obviously overwhelmed by everything. I'm sitting right behind the Metcalf family. Carmelo Anthony's family is on the opposite side of the courtroom. But again, the video, not as impactful as I thought, but it definitely is a scene setter to help us understand clearer as to what's going on, since we haven't seen anything so far in this case.
Incredible detail, Cody. You're setting the scene for us. Not being able to see what's going on in this case that has so many eyes on it is really helpful. You also broke some news for us earlier when it came to the jury. There's been a lot of questions about who's on this jury, what may be their
Listen to this, y'all.
How will that impact a case that has had a lot of polarization racially, especially online, even though we know these parties say, even the prosecution today in the opening saying this is not about race. But what have you observed about the racial makeup of this jury?
Yeah, Julia, so of course, with the optics of this case, this story here, young black kid, young white kid, violent crime, of course, people are going to have their opinions, they're going to have their judgments, and, the jury was, the makeup of the jury was in question. And so, of course, I was in jury selection yesterday, and that jury was seated around just after 5 p.m. yesterday, and I couldn't necessarily see the courtroom today. We saw reports last night that there was no African-American people on the jury, and that held to be true. It's a majority white jury, of course, made up of men and women. There are 3 Asian women on the jury.
We got an all-male jury. All male jurors are white. 3 Asian women, 1 Middle Eastern woman, 1 other woman of color. 12 jurors, 6 alternates.
One looked, what looked to be a Middle Eastern.
Why nobody black on the jury? Why is that?
Woman on the jury and another person of darker complexion on the jury, but none of them were African American. There's a total of 12 jurors, 6 alternates, so a total of 18, I guess I should say. But yeah, majority white jury. All the men are white as well, so the reports were true. No African American people on this jury. I remember yesterday during jury selection, the defense raised an objection to the prosecution's strikes. In the strike zone, there were 3 black female jurors that the prosecution wanted to strike, and that would have been all the African American jurors that were available at the time. prosecution says they did
Hold
not
up.
strike them on a racial basis, but on an
So you mean to tell me you only had 3 black jurors and they just happened to be female?
jurors that the prosecution wanted to strike, and that would have been all selection. The defense raised an objection to the prosecution's strikes. In the strike zone, there were 3 black female jurors that the prosecution wanted to strike, and that would have been all the African-American jurors that were available at the time. And the prosecution says they did not strike them on a racial basis, but on an occupational basis, because they were all educators, and they thought that would hold some sort of bias because all of this went down at a school. But the defense's objection was eventually denied by the judge, and the judge, granted the strikes on behalf of the prosecution. So those are the only 3 available African-American jurors at the time, right before the jury got seated. That objection got denied about 15 minutes before it was seated yesterday. So majority white jury, 3 Asian women, and 2 women of color, but no African-Americans at all.
Wow, and the judge saying that there were race-neutral reasons for the strikes of the African-Americans in that pool. Cody Thomas, thank you for all of those details. I know you got to get back inside of that courtroom and grab some lunch before
Sound
you
like
get
some
back.
bullshit
So
to me.
We'll see you later on. There's no escaping how polarizing this trial is. Both Carmelo's mother and Austin Metcalf's father have spoken about the emotional toll here. And joining me now is someone who knows really better than anyone about a trial being this polarizing. He's an attorney successfully
This
defended
fucking
George
dickhead
Zimmerman,
right
who
there.
was accused of murdering Trayvon Martin.
George
That was a
Zimmerman,
case that
fuck
had
this
issues
asshole.
of race and self-defense. It defined that trial as well. We have with us Mark O'Mara. Mark, it is so good to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me. I think you're an important voice here because whether you see it this way or not, there are many people online, people who are reacting to this case, and it often seems this way whenever we have a case where 2 different parties are of different races. You have a self-defense allegation and one is unarmed, the victim. There's often a reference to the Trayvon Martin case, the George Zimmerman case. I want to ask your opinion. Do you see similarities here in this case?
Oh, no, there definitely are. It is undeniable, and we can't and really shouldn't even deny the harsh reality that race interposes itself on most criminal trials. It imposes itself on the criminal justice system as a whole, and it does so here in this case, only because they are of different races. Now, I'm not saying that Carmelo had any racial intent in his actions, but we as the observers, right, as the viewers of it, look at this and say, oh, obviously there's a racial component. There may have been nothing in either one of their minds the day that this happened, this tragedy occurred. But we look at it as lawyers and as commentators and say we have to be aware of it because we know, and I've argued for decades, that there's an undeniable bias existing in the criminal justice system against young black males. Used to be we could never even talk about it 20 years ago or so. Finally, we can talk about that undeniable bias, but it's there. And I'll tell you, I'm very concerned that there's not an African American on this panel, and more concerned that the state was able to cross out 3 African American females that were opposed to what we used to call, what we do call a Batson strike, because of the concern of a racial striking. And that's a problem for this trial, and we haven't even started yet.
Yeah, that's been concerning to a lot of people who are reacting to this. I'm curious what the breakdown was in that landmark trial that you successfully represented George Zimmerman, if you remember. Was it similar? There are other cases. The Ahmaud Arbery one stands out to me, where there was a question of that jury. There was only one African American on that one down in Brunswick, Georgia. What do you think that has, if it has an impact at all, how the outcome may be in this case, and will they have a successful appeal if there's a conviction?
Well, again, my jury was 6 women, only one who was identified as maybe biracial, but no African Americans on my jury. I'm very concerned, as I mentioned a moment ago, about the fact that we now go into this trial with a racial component not only existing as it did before jury selection.
This is why you need
but
African Americans on the jury.
exaggerated or exacerbated
Somebody that kind of help
because
save
now
your ass, because look what happened to fucking George
non-African
Zimmerman,
Americans
Trayvon
are
Martin
going to
case.
decide this
They got his ass off that motherfucker because there's no black jurors on the fucking Trayvon Martin case. Just like this is the guy who fucking represented George Zimmerman, and he just said the reason why we got him off because there was no black jurors on the George Zimmerman case, Trayvon Martin case. And that's what's going to happen on this situation right here. They've been the railroad, my man Carmelo.
And just as we had to deal with in the
Look.
Zimmerman case, you
Look
have
at
to have
all male jurors are white. 3 Asian women, 1 Middle Eastern woman, 1 other woman of color. 12 jurors, 6 alternates. Come on, man.
something that people can place their trust in the verdict, whatever it is. And I was sort of in the Zimmerman case that since all the evidence came out, all the arguments came out, that it would at least be understood, but it was still difficult to trust. When you go into a case like this with the undeniable racial concern and do it with a jury that is no African Americans, not only do you build in an possible appellate issue, but you really build in a social issue that how is the black community going to look at this if he gets convicted and say this is a just verdict? They're going to look at it the way they've had to for decades, which is to buy a system. Here's an example of it.
Oh, wow. Really great insight, Mark. We have to get a break, but you're going to stick around a little longer. We have a lot we're going to talk about on this case. Coming up, we're going to look at the facts of the case. Also, what we learned from opening statements, but we're going back to the initial report. What did those witnesses on the scene, including the defendant, say to officers right after this stabbing?
Let's hear this. Let's hear what the witnesses got to say, y'all.
Nothing artificial. WGU's online healthcare programs are built.
Let's hear what the witnesses got to say. Because his little group, his twin brother, because Austin Metcalf was a twin as well. And his brother was there. I'm pretty sure they had a little girlfriends there too. So let's check and see what they got to say. Thank God we had hold up. I forgot. We actually had a witness. Because remember earlier they said Carmelo seen someone that he knew at the track meet. I think he was his girlfriend or something like that. So hopefully she can come and tell what she saw. You know what I'm saying? And see if it coincides with what these other people said. Let's find out, man. Hopefully she was there and she'd be a great witness for the defense.
Tension is going to affect the case. I believe or not, coming from a black American, I actually think it's going to be a fair trial. I don't think the racial tension is going to affect the case. I believe in the judge. I also believe in the prosecutor, and I heard that Mike Howard, the attorney for the defense side, is actually good.
Those are comments
Shut the
outside of
fuck
the
up.
courthouse where we are in Texas this hour for day one of the
Texas?
Carmelo Anthony
Stop.
trial. He's a defendant charged with first-degree murder.
They're finna try to railroad this young man.
17-year-old Austin Metcalf at a high school track meet. Key pieces of evidence in this trial are going to be the surveillance footage from the stadium and witness statements. That surveillance video has already come out inside of the courtroom. But we're taking a look at what those statements were in the police report from the people who witnessed the incident. So a school resource officer was taking down these statements in the police report. Let's take a look at witness statement number 1. And this is a minor, a witness that was sitting under the Memorial High pop-up tent with his team near the victim, Austin Metcalf. The suspect, Carmelo Anthony, was from Centennial High, was sitting under the Memorial High tent. Austin told Carmelo that he needed to move out from under their team's tent. Carmelo grabbed his bag, opened it, reached inside, and proceeded to tell Austin, quote, "Touch me and see what happens." No one really thought Carmelo really had any weapons in his bag, and Austin proceeded to touch Carmelo. Then Carmelo told Austin to punch him and see what happens. A short time later, Austin grabbed Carmelo to tell him to move, and Carmelo pulled out what this witness recalled as a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. Let's talk about what that statement means for this case. Joining us to discuss
Well, listen to this. Listen to this shit again.
this recalled as punch him and see what happens. No one really thought Carmelo from under their team's tent. Carmelo
Sound like the dude provoked him.
reached inside and proceeded to tell Austin, quote, touch me and see what happens. No one really thought Carmelo really had any weapons in his bag, and Austin proceeded to touch Carmelo. Then Carmelo told Austin to punch him and see what happens. A short time later, Austin grabbed Carmelo to tell him to move, and Carmelo pulled out what this witness recalled as a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. Let's talk about what that statement means for this case. Joining us to discuss, we have trial attorney Mark O'Mara still with us and former prosecutor Nicole DeBoard with us. Thanks so much for being with us and breaking down this case for our viewers. Nicole, I want to start with you. With that witness statement, if you're just focusing on that, if that was the only witness to take the stand in front of this jury, do you think that this sounds like murder or self-defense?
I'm going to say this is going to be a tall mountain to climb for the defense. It sounds very much like murder. There's a couple of things that really create an issue here because under Texas law, you cannot bring a weapon to a confrontation. And based on that statement alone, essentially what we're hearing is that
that's
the
bullshit.
person who was provoking the encounter, because he's saying, touch me and see what happens, is actually the person who has appeared at the encounter with a weapon. Certainly that's not going to be what the defense has to say about it, but I will say this does sound like a tall hill to climb in terms of self-defense.
Yeah, the defense did try to clean that up in their opening statements with whether he said touch me and see what happens or touch me and don't touch me and we'll be cool. Mark, I want to show you witness statement number 2 in this police report. This witness stated to police that they were all sitting on the bleachers under a Memorial High tent when another male he did not know walked over and sat under the tent. That would be Carmelo Anthony. Austin told this male that since he didn't go to Memorial, he had to leave the tent. Austin and the male went back and forth.
You think he told him
Then
just like
Austin
that?
stood up and pushed the male to get out of the tent. During the time of the arguing, the male was reaching around in the bag that he had. It was at this time that the male took out the knife and stabbed Austin and then left the scene. They're substantially the same, Mark, in terms of what they're saying. There are a few differences, but what's your take on whether or not from those witness statements at the time that this happened, where do you think the jury would land on a case like this?
You know, it's going to be a tough call, and I know that's an easy thing to say. You can't lose if you say you're in the middle. It's going to be a tough call for these reasons. When you actually do an analysis of self-defense, there are different components. You know, the argument that Carmelo Anthony was there and he shouldn't have been there. Well, that's okay, but it's not your bleachers. You don't get to throw people out because of the tent. That's
Exactly.
what you're going to see the defense make. Why did the eventual victim in this case decide that it was his role to kick him out? And then
because he was being a bully.
Back and forth, and then unfortunately, Mr. Metcalf did seemingly start the fight, so to speak, right? He was what we might call the aggressor, and in pushing him out or grabbing him and touching him. So under Florida law and also Texas law, and when you're the aggressor, when you first start the fight, so to speak, you may lose the protection. If it was Carmelo who started, Carmelo Anthony. Now we get to say shifted because if Metcalf was the one who started the fight, now can Anthony respond to defend himself? We know he can, and then as was mentioned a moment ago, you know, are you supposed to bring a knife to a fist fight? No. You're supposed to bring a gun to a fist fight? Absolutely not. But if you're there and starting to get attacked, which is what the defense is going to say, can you defend
Which he
yourself?
was.
And what they're going to say is, Anthony doesn't need to wait until the first nasty strike, the first injury. He can presuppose what might happen, and he's allowed to defend himself. But again, really a tough case, because it really is in the middle, and we're talking about two 17-year-olds, and not making fun of us, but neither of which were acting with real good reason. We joke and say that a male brain isn't fully developed until 25, and unfortunately the tragedy happened probably because of a mix of testosterone and immaturity
Exactly.
that brought these two boys together.
Yeah, Nicole, we talk a lot about whether race has a factor here, but I think age
Yeah.
has a really big factor here. And not only the age of the defendant, the age of the stabbing victim, but also the ages of these witnesses who are going to be having to take the stand. This has been a traumatic experience for them, seeing their friend stabbed in front of them.
Oh my God.
Do you anticipate that they'll be able to shed more light on what happened, or even if at the height of this, they'll be able to say whether there was this initial aggression that Mark is talking about? But at what level would it actually be warranted for self-defense, do you think? I mean, there's this push in the police report, there's the shoving, there's the grabbing. I saw that word in the police report as well. What would it have to be in order, in your mind, to be self-defense?
In order for this to be self-defense, the law says that the person using this deadly force has to believe that that deadly force is immediately necessary to prevent serious bodily injury or death. So this is self-defense. You cannot pull out a gun or a knife, a weapon which can be used as a deadly weapon, say, in response to a minor assault. And that's unfortunately not what the law allows. If you think that you are at risk of being seriously harmed, it is a different calculus. So that is what the defense is going to have to demonstrate. And really, the Texas law on the defense's side, one thing that might potentially make this a little bit easier for them is once they have made a claim that Carmelo actually believed that he was in imminent danger of serious bodily injury or death. There's evidence of that in front of the jury. Once that happens, essentially what has to happen is that the prosecution has to disprove that. So these witnesses that we're going to hear from, which are just these young kids who are essentially, going to a high school track meet, have to be able to get up on the stand and really explain what was going on. And, on the prosecution side, I think these are going to be really compelling witnesses because of their youth on the one hand. On the other hand, they're going to have to endure adult cross-examination.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of cross-examination and people being on the stand, Mark O'Mara, I know we have to go to break soon, but I want to get your final thoughts. The defendant taking the stand, do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it is necessary here? Will we see that happen?
We always know that our own client is always our worst witness and his own worst enemy. And that's the problem. However, in a self-defense case, you almost have to take the stand to say, here's why I did what I did. Don't forget, self-defense is an affirmative act. I did it, and I intended to do it, and here's why. So you have to say the why. The other problem that the Anthony team is going to have to overcome that's relevant to the Texas law and Florida law is if you're doing an event that you perceive to be self-defense, then once the threat is gone, you have an affirmative action to fix things a little bit. Flight away from the scene actually hurts the defense because once you stabbed, once you've done what you had to do because of your self-defense right, okay, threat is gone, help,
That's right there. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. And I'm going to go in and end it with this right here, y'all. Whether it's self-defense or not, the guy came down there bullying my man Carmelo, in my opinion. Now, I believe they're going to railroad this dude, and they're going to get him off that because they trying to say that he didn't match Austin with the same energy, meaning the same kind of violence. He pushed him. They trying to say Carmelo took it too far by stabbing him. And then, even if it was self-defense, why did you take off and run? And they're trying to say that once the police got him, they trying to say that he actually said, there's no alleged, I actually did this. You know what I'm saying? So he admitted to doing this, but my question is, why did he run? Now, he ran out of fear, which is possible. He's a kid. But I wish he'd have stayed there, though. I wish he'd have stayed and This dude here said help. Okay, possibly help, but still, he should have just stayed. That probably would have helped his self-defense case out a little bit more had he stayed. That's all I'm saying.
Your aid, call the cops, stick around and give your opinion of self-defense. And I know we're talking about 17-year-olds, but anyone who leaves the scene and then argues self-defense is sort of inconsistent with their behavior.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk a lot more about that and
That's
exactly
what's gonna
what
get him.
police say he did after he fled. Mark O'Mara, thank you so much for lending us your time and spending time helping us analyze this case. Nicole, you're gonna stick around. We have a lot more ahead. We're gonna take a closer look at what was said during those opening statements. Cameras on the side of the courtroom, but we have the notes and we're gonna break down what was said by the prosecution and
You out there being in the open.
But look,
Domino's pieces.
I'm gonna end it on this case right here, y'all. I'm gonna follow this tomorrow. Let y'all know my thoughts and opinions on this case. That's all I got for y'all, man. I'm out. Peace.